I'm not going to drown you for real. I just want you to understand I mean business.
No way. Oh my God. No way. Oh my God.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 104 of 1 Million of the Serial Chillers podcast from the Super Network studio. No Hella Greg tonight. He is running from government helicopters in his helicopter. But tonight instead, we have sitting in the Bigfoot corner doing Bigfoot things.
Birdman. What's up, y'all?
Coo-coo. Yes, so Bigfoot is here in the flesh, co-hosting this bad motherfucker. Don't forget to follow the show anywhere you guys like. Facebook is Serial Chillers Podcast. The Facebook group and Instagram and email are all of the same name. The Twitter is at Chillers Podcast. Call or text the show 1-805-666-2513. SerialChillersPodcast.threadless.com for all your merchandise needs. Rate and review on everything, please. Patreon.com/SerialChillersPodcast to, give us money. Also, don't forget to check out Super Simpsons Show and Death & Co. Podcast, both out there, part of the Super Network. And also, thank you to He Who Seeks Vengeance for the new theme song and some of the sweet guitar riffs you will hear tonight. And now, our guest introductions. Welcoming for the first time as an entire unit. I will introduce you as a whole, and then as individuals. Welcome, Color Me Dead Podcast, Angel and Nikki.
Hello.
Hey, fucking sweet to have you guys here.
Finally, thank you.
I know, I'm excited to be back.
So last time I was like, yo, throw your stuff out there. And Nikki was like, yeah, nah, you find us.
I went totally blank. I'm like, you can find us. But
Yeah,
if you'll notice when you listen to our show, she always plugs our social media because I'm like,
All right, so Angel,
I don't know.
Take it away.
Just Google us. Google it, you'll find it. It's fine.
It's true because I remember I was looking for something of your guys's, and it's always like the true sign of once you've made it as a show is once you can get your Google in, you're like, yeah, fuck yeah, we're the first result, and that's right, baby.
Like goddamn right.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that mine's the first result because I Google it so much. I don't know. Just kidding.
Like, wait, I just got a Google alert. Oh, it's because I Googled myself. Okay, cool.
I Googled myself. Yeah,
Cool.
that was
All right.
me.
Well, hey, you got to know where you stand in the world, and I can appreciate that. Check out Color Me Dead, you guys. You guys will enjoy them. If you enjoy us, you'll enjoy them. We all like
Angel knows our social media.
If you'd like to find us, you can literally everywhere. If you want us to ignore you on Twitter, it's Color Me Dead Pod. Facebook group, Color Me Dead, all the way across the board. On Instagram, you can follow Color Me Dead Angel or Gory_Nikki, and also the Color Me Dead podcast. Check out Edge Radio for the Syndicate. Follow our show, Shop the Bazaar, check out some other shows.
See?
That was fucking smooth too, man. That was real smooth. I like that. All right.
That's always her. That's always her cue. I'm like, we're there.
You got it.
No. When she's not here, I'm like, I don't know.
All right. Well, now that we're all introduced, we've got our social medias out there, except for BIGGFOOT Designs. Check out Bigfoot. He makes some really awesome creations and rings too. Yay! So you guys know how the show works. Let me explain it for anybody that doesn't. Each week, I sit down with old friends, new friends, good friends, and bad friends to tell them the story of an infamous serial killer. Throughout the show, you guys can chime in on my story, and if you brought a story of your own that is true crime, dark, creepy, unsolved, or otherwise mysterious, please feel free to share it. Lastly, if you have questions about questions, make sure to ask questions because I cannot answer questions about questions if you never ask questions. Are there any questions?
What was the question?
Then welcome to and let's play the Serial Chillers podcast. Yeah. All right, guys. Today's serial killer. I feel like quite a heavy hitter. I feel like an underrated as such because the depravity is there, perhaps the kill count not. Tell me, have you heard of Gary Heidnick?
No.
Shit. No.
Ugh.
Yes.
I wanted to know who it was so bad.
I love it when I have other true crime podcasts on because I'll say it and because you never know what bizarre fucking stories you guys have covered. And you say it and they just go, no, fuck.
Fuck. I'm really hoping that something will pop up and
It
I'll be
always
like,
does.
wait a minute.
It always,
know.
you know
There
for
it
sure you've
is.
at least read some like weird like infographic about this, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna fucking.
That's exactly what I was hoping for. I was like, maybe I've skimmed somewhere and found. No.
The name sounds familiar, but I can't pull any.
I will.
Anything out of
So
memory?
you might get some just from the citation. So let me really quickly hit these citations and sources. We've got a documentary that was a killer profile, Gary the Basement Killer Heidnick, from Daily Motion. Serial killer Gary Heidnick, the real life Buffalo Bill, who fed one of his victims to prisoners, from allthat'sinteresting.com. Inside the House of Heidnick from phillymag.com, and Gary Heidnick's wiki page, and The Basement, a book by R.J. Parker. Any of those?
We got all excited when he said Buffalo Bill, and then we're like, no.
Nope. Like, I have a feeling I'm about to get spanked in true crime.
Just a little bit.
All right, so
Yeah.
we started off the same way every time. Question number 1. In what year was Gary Heidnick born? You guys don't have to write anything down. You're sitting next to each other. I'll just let you throw them out there.
Are we collectively guessing, or are we against each
You're
other?
against each other. Oh yeah, there's no competitor tonight. You guys are head to head.
I'm going to go with 1965.
$1, Bob.
68.
68.
Ooh.
The points are going to Nikki because he was born November 22nd, 1943.
Jesus Christ, Pierda.
Going
Damn.
back.
We are way fucking off.
That's a old bastard.
Was she a great big old fat lady?
She was a bigger girl.
What are you
I'm
about,
a-
a size 13? God, now I want to watch that too. You guys are just bringing it out of me tonight. All right. So, November 22nd, 1943, Gary Heidnick was born to Michael and Ellen Heidnick and raised in the Eastlake suburb of Cleveland, Ohio. They were initially a very happy couple who never had any issues. Within 1 year, they had another son named Terry. So, you know, Gary and Terry, that's not...
Of course.
Fuck.
I always wondered.
Why do people fucking do that?
I always wondered myself.
Like, and then you wonder why your kid grew up to be fucking nuts. Because you did that shit to him.
And they
we
were
don't know
born
if they're
like...
Gary or Terry or Jesus Christ.
And they were born like 11 months, 20 days apart. So they like
Yeah, dude,
could
they
have been
had
in the
Irish
same
twins
grade.
with rhymey names.
That's right. No. They probably dressed them alike and shit too. This is why he was a fucking serial killer.
You set him up for failure. You did this. Blame yourself. Kill yourself.
Hey, usually we get to that conclusion, but it's usually after more than one line. So
We like to conclude early.
I like that. Bring the hot takes and bring them fast. Okay, so they're super happy couple. They have a second son within a year. It says pretty much in all reports that there was a slew of problems, but I imagine as a father of a 3 and a 5-year-old, I can imagine what may have happened having two kids back to back like that. But in 1946, I think it's pretty unheard of to see a couple like actually successfully divorce, which they do. So in 1946, his parents are going to divorce due to, quote, a slew of problems. The Heidnick children were then raised by their mother for 4 years before being placed in the care of their father and his new wife, who were much more well off. So, getting dressed alike, getting called fucking Terry and Gary, getting bounced around between parents, divorce at an early age. I mean, they were 2 and 1 when the divorce happened. So I don't know if that affects the child the same way that if they're 5 or 6 and understand things a little better. I haven't really been a part of one in such a way and to have the examples. But to me, a 2-year-old isn't grasping things as much as someone a little older. But still, getting bounced around between parents is probably never fun. No. So Heidnick would later claim that he was often emotionally abused by his father and later his stepmother, citing one such trip to a grocery store where Gary accidentally knocked over one of those huge fucking can displays. Like he total accident, and it's And his father, Michael, beat him in the store so hard that onlookers had to step in because they were afraid he was going to kill his son over this.
Jesus.
Like, it was like the store manager being like, hey, it's just soup, we discount the dented ones, we put the non-dented ones back up there. What are you going to do? You could stop
5 points.
Stop stabbing your son.
Like, don't get me wrong, I'm all about a good old-fashioned passionate ass kicking, but like when you're breaking ribs and shit,
You
might want to throw in the towel.
When strangers are like, hey, bro, that's enough in 1949.
For real,
Right.
that had to be rough.
I mean, because back then, other people were taking their fucking belts off, being like, "Did you need some help kicking his ass over them soups?"
That was
I
like
don't
the
know if your belt's
principal's
strong
thing.
enough.
Bend him over,
Use the
boy.
buckle side.
My buckle's better than yours. Here you go.
Bigger and better.
You get across a little more punishment that way. Is the buckle side, is that the life you go, Casey?
No, but I did get hit with the buckle slide once on accident, and I remember like going to block it, and it hit my knuckles, and I was like, ah.
Oh,
And
I should have just let it hit the fleshy part.
Yeah, and my dad realized what happened, and I could tell that he like wanted to say he was sorry, but he was also still like punishing me. And so he was like, that's what you get when you try to stop me from spanking you. And then later on in the night, he came back and he was like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hit you with that part.
I'll make sure I wrap my hands around that 3 times next time.
The buckle side's no joke.
No.
So he's living, let's call it mildly traumatizing life pretty early on. Question number 2, Gary would suffer from a lifelong issue. Which of these would it be? Is it A, stuttering, B, a lisp, C, aneurysm, or D, epilepsy?
stutter.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say too.
Dang,
Stuttering.
double stutters. It is very popular right now. The Bill Denborough special, stuttering. He's a lifelong bedwetter. Aneurysm
Oh my
for the
God, he's part
wind.
of the. God damn it! I should have said bedwetter.
Of course he fucking is.
Well, that's part of like
Yeah.
the true crime holy trinity.
Yep.
They piss their bed, they abuse animals, and they have fucking antisocial behavior.
Fun fact about Pee Wee Gaskins.
And that's the final
He peed
truth.
the bed. It's a final truth. I'm reading that fucking book. Fuck that book. I hate it. Anyway, he peed the bed after his first like real murder that he did, not the one in prison, but like the next day he woke up and pissed himself. He was like 35 years old.
He's like, yeah,
That's when it started.
that's real nice. That's how relaxed I am, and that's the final truth.
And that's the final
And
truth.
that's the final truth.
God, reading that book, he really says that a lot. He's like, final truth.
Uh,
And it like that's how it starts. He'll start explaining stuff. Final truth, and then he'll explain something. He's like, and that's my final truth.
It's like
I'm
when Cajun
oh,
people
God.
say, not a word of lie, and then they tell their story. All right, final truth. This is what happened. I lowered his body with an engine block down into a scum pond.
Pretty much.
So, okay, yeah, he's going to suffer a lifelong problem with bedwetting and claims that early on his father would humiliate him by forcing him to hang his stained sheets from his bedroom window in full view of the neighbors.
Oh,
That's a good
that's all right.
So just kind of a, hey, check this fucking idiot out. Pissed the bed again last night.
You see them sheets over there? Them's the sheets.
Oh, man.
He pissed the whole damn bed.
So after his son's eventual arrest, Michael Heidnick denied that he ever emotionally or physically abused his son.
Right.
Of course.
Right, yeah. Wait, he killed people? No, I never touched him.
Oh fuck no, I didn't do that.
But back then, we were talking about this the other day. Back then, that was just punishment. Like,
Yeah, they didn't
that
know.
wasn't
They
any
didn't.
abuse.
They didn't know that emotional abuse wasn't a term that had been invented yet.
No, fuck no.
So at school, Gary did not interact with his fellow students very often, and he refused to make eye contact with anybody. When a well-meaning new female student asked, "Did you get the homework done, Gary?" It's like third day of school, and she's like new to the school. He turns to her and yells in her face and says, "You're not worthy enough to talk to me!"
Wow.
Oh right.
So
Know your place, bitch.
I want to say this was in the 4th grade or 5th grade. So Gary's got some pretty, he's got a superiority complex, let's say. He doesn't want to make eye contact, but not because he feels like he's awkward or has anxiety because people aren't worthy enough to.
Tell me again what month he was born in.
He was born in, I want to say it was November. And yes, November
Yeah,
22nd.
November. How tall was he?
That's a great question that I don't have the answer to.
Just random.
Producer
random
Bigfoot's
question.
going to check that out.
Oh, producer now. I don't,
Yeah,
hey,
producer
hey,
co-host. You know, it's a double.
I won't be cutting anything up.
You
so.
got a double tag on this one.
You didn't know what you were getting into. Did you?
Yeah. Well, he looks that up. I would say that he was at least of average height. He wasn't a short dude. It didn't appear.
Okay. I was wondering if he had like the little man complex.
Oh, Pee Wee had that the hardest. I don't know if anybody
Yeah, oh,
ever
I
had it
know.
like that
How do you
again.
spell his last name?
Heidnick. Stupid ass last name. All right. So, with the encouragement of his father, 14-year-old Gary enrolled in the since defunct Staunton Military Academy in Staunton, Virginia for 2 years, leaving just months before his graduation unexpectedly. It's for like no reason. He was like, "No, I don't want to graduate. I'll have to look at people in the eyes there." So he would return home and go to another public high school where he would eventually drop out. After the dropout, he's going to join the military. Question number 3. What branch?
Navy.
You
I
really
think
think
he
so?
go first. I don't know. It was the first thing that came to my mind.
He's gonna join the military. You're probably right with the Navy, but I'll go Army. Like he can't possibly go Marine Corps.
I was gonna
There's
say
no
it's gonna
fucking
be
way.
Marine Corps, but okay.
If you say Marine Corps, like there's no fucking way.
There isn't. Angel's on the board, 250 points, because
Damn
yes,
it.
he wanted to be all that he could be and joined the Army. He was 17 years old at the time. 16 was the age you can get in at. So Heidnick would serve only 13 months in the Army. During basic training, his drill sergeant graded him as excellent. Following basic training, he applied for several specialist positions, including a military police, but was always rejected. He was sent to San Antonio, Texas to be trained as a medic and did well through medical training. However, Heidnick did not stay in San Antonio very long and was transferred to the 46th Army Surgical Hospital in Landstuhl, West Germany. So he was very gifted in the medical field, apparently. He wasn't, although he didn't like look people in the eyes in school, he got his grades done. He got his grades, homework done. His grades were very good, and he had a very high IQ. He was tested, his IQ was like in the almost near 150, so well above average. Shithead through and through. But he's in Germany now. He's working at a surgical hospital. He's considered a great medic, but his personality was definitely still an issue. But he was such a great medic that it was often overlooked. He did not converse with any coworkers in his entire time there. He did not make eye contact with one person, patient, superior, anything. They just kind of overlooked it because of how valuable he was as a medic. So,
right.
I mean, be good at something and do whatever the fuck you want. Look at
Including
NFL wide
Christopher.
receivers. Within
No, they get cut eventually.
yeah, nowadays.
Finally.
Yeah. So most of his coworkers thought he was a man who just kept to himself and was just really good at his job, focused on his work. Within weeks of his new posting in Germany, he would earn his GED so he could continue his education in the medical field. In August of 1962, Heidnick began complaining of severe headaches, dizziness, blurred vision, and nausea, and checked himself into the hospital that he was working at. So he comes in on his day off, and he's like flush, and they're like, "What's wrong, Gary?" And he mentioned these things, but he mentions to like one other nurse that he seems to trust a little bit, that he's also maybe like hearing some voices.
All right.
So a hospital neurologist takes a look. They're kind of trying to do it low key. You know, they're his buddy. They work there together. It's military. They don't want to just throw him under the bus for something, I think. So a neurologist takes a look at him and diagnoses him with gastroenteritis and noticed that he also displayed symptoms of some mental illness for which he was prescribed trifluperazine or stelazine, which is an antipsychotic. It can treat psychotic disorders and anxiety. It can also treat nausea and vomiting caused by chemotherapy. So and I don't know if I understand that correctly, but it seems to me like they gave him one diagnosis and then gave him like almost an incorrect medicine to treat what was actually going on.
Here, just take this. It'll work, I promise.
Yeah.
This here is thalidomide. Now it's gonna help your morning sickness, but your babies are gonna be born with fucking flippers. Basic side effect, not that serious. Don't worry about it. Take the meds. Get to work.
In October of 1962, Heidnick was transferred to a military hospital in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where he was diagnosed with schizoid personality disorder and honorably discharged from his military service.
I didn't see that coming.
So he got away from the people who kind of like really trusted him and saw, what he was as a medical professional, and got with some people that were just like, this guy's fucking crazy, dude. What the hell's going on? Did you guys miss this or what the fuck?
Did you actually check him out?
Yeah.
Or...
Oh, gastroenteritis, and you gave him the antipsychotic. I see.
He's hearing voices, so you say that he has a stomach problem. I get it.
Get him a ginger ale.
Glad
It'll
he's
shut
here.
him up.
We got him in West Philadelphia now. He wasn't born here, but we'll raise him.
On the playground is where I spent most of my days.
I'm glad someone got it. Thank you. So, it's the same story. I feel like every fucking episode where people are treating the symptoms, not, fixing the problems. And most of the time it's like, I treat it, and I can walk away for like several years and come back and see if it's been all right. Okay. So, Gary, not feeling particularly good because he's been even though he was honorably discharged, he's pretty crushed to know that he's always felt himself very superior. So for them to say you're mentally inferior, you've got a schizoid personality disorder, you can no longer be in the military, it didn't sit well with him. He knew that he was superior, and for that reason, most agree that Gary was very unlikely to have ever been taking the medications that were prescribed to him. So he was probably never touching the pills anyway, because he's a doctor, thinks he knows what's best for my brain.
Excuse me.
Like Homer, in my brain? In 1964, he's now 21 years old. He holds a very deep hatred now for the military. Heidnick started taking nursing classes in Philadelphia and enrolled into University of Pennsylvania to study medicine. So for a second, you're like, hey, okay, like, fuck, yeah, turn it around, big boy. He completes the year of medical training, but by this time, he had already quit his study of medicine. Oh, all right, well, I mean, you're still doing something, though. That's good. That's good. You tried.
There was an attempt.
When you hear voices, the best field to go into is the medical field.
I feel like I think that's perfect. You could just maybe they'll like give you good ideas on diagnoses.
Oh yeah, you can actually like bounce ideas. You can discuss shit with yourself.
That's how House did it. Whoa!
Yes. Oh my God, we've solved it.
Shit. So he receives an internship at Philadelphia General Hospital working as a psychological nurse. Not qualified for this job quite yet. Nobody disagreed with that, but they also didn't have anybody even like applying for the job. So they were like, well, look, he's not quite qualified, but like, what better way to get qualified than just throw him in there, right?
That on-the-job training.
Yeah. Yes, the Dragon Force through the fire and the flames training.
I feel like this would be all right, man. Like, most people can smell their own kind, so...
Yeah, he was
like, if he's hearing voices, he should be able to sniff that out of somebody else that walked in with their pants full of shit and their brain full of weird things.
You just walk around sniffing them.
It's you.
Oh,
You're crazy.
You smell good. So I think the problem is that he's much closer to being a patient than the nurse. Like in his brain, that's what's happening. So this was said to be a very dangerous position for someone like him who believed themselves superior to everybody. Even if he wasn't diagnosed with something, somebody with a superiority complex, a psychological nurse is not the landing spot, I don't believe. Unless it's like the 1880s and you're just like, get in this cold bath and I'll put the zipper around your neck, you fucker. In 1967, after working as a nurse in Philadelphia, General Heidnick purchased his own 3-story house, renting out 2 floors of it. So he kind of blocked off the first floor and made several of the bedrooms over the next 2 floors, like studio apartments, common bathrooms style thing. He started hanging out down the street from this 3-story house at a place called the Elwyn Institute, which was a place for the mentally challenged. So it's like a school who just helped mentally challenged young people learn to get into the community. And we're talking late 60s. This isn't like today where it's as common as it is. So this is a very specialized academy. Gary starts like hanging out there on a pretty regular basis. And why? Because he's cruising the dating pool, of course. Gary, with his superiority complex, figured there's no better way to feel like the smartest person in the room than to go and date only people who are not even capable of being as smart as he is. So,
That's basically what I've done my whole life. Just kidding.
but on accident, though.
Was it? No, just kidding.
Dude. Well, like one of the things my dad told my husband right before we got married, he was like, just so you know, it is a good thing she's pretty. I was like, hey, motherfucker, like she will do some dumb shit. Don't help.
I was hiding that until after, bro.
He's like, she is the dumbest smart person you'll ever meet.
That's
Wait until annulment time is over before you tell him that. Jesus Christ.
Good thing you're pretty.
So Gary has kind of found his niche here. He's finding the women he likes. They're easily malleable to his manipulative ways. He can convince them of just about anything, and he's grown an expert in this field. So it's pretty fucking grim. Yeah, he's starting to also struggle with alcoholism in a big way, and he can't get a grip on it at all. His mother also becomes an alcoholic at the exact same time, so he's drinking constantly. She's drinking constantly, and he sees her to begin to get sick and to deteriorate, and it actually helps him to stop drinking. Good for him, I guess.
Wow.
But his mom's also at this time diagnosed with bone cancer. And she was not doing well. She never stopped drinking. She has the bone cancer. They gave her some pain pills because apparently that's a very painful cancer. And she just OD'd on her pain pills. Like the second they gave her enough to do so, she just killed herself with them. So,
Whoa. I mean,
I can't say that
yeah,
I blame her.
I don't blame her. I
Yeah.
probably do the same thing. Like, fuck this shit.
yeah.
I'm out. Bye.
Right. So she definitely several times she tried apparently. So she was found a few times. She had been found OD'd on her own pain pills, and then in 1970, while suffering extreme depression and losing everything, she went ahead and did the poison pills deal. So I'm sorry, incorrect. She tried to kill herself with pills. Shit. She actually killed herself. Question number 4. The pills weren't working.
Not with pills. I know what it's not.
Well, what's great about that is pills is not one of the options. Ooh. Question number 4. In what way did she actually commit suicide? Was it A, a gun, B, she hung herself, C, she slit the wrists, or D, with poison?
I'm going to go with B.
Hanging.
Yes.
Oh, did I miss your answer, or are you still get?
No.
Okay.
I'm
You looked like you had answered and were waiting for me.
Into it. What year was it?
This was 1970.
A gun.
A gun and a hanging. Neither of those will score points. She couldn't poison herself with pills, so she decided to poison herself with mercuric chloride.
Damn it.
God damn, she
That's
went
metal.
heavy.
Yeah, that is metal. Mercury.
That's heavy.
So, she kills herself. She drinks 5 ounces of mercuric chloride. Gary tried to question why his mother would do such a thing, all the while playing stoic for anyone that may be paying attention. But inside, he was dying and just wanted to know, he didn't get that why she would kill herself, like the pain and suffering. Why would she would leave behind what she had, which was nothing. Her life was falling apart. She didn't have money. She didn't have family. She didn't have friends. So Gary was really crushed by it, and I don't think he realized that he was going to be while she was dying. But when she did die, it really kind of hit him hard. So this would make the fact Gary would take his first attempt at his own life at this time, being crushed over his mother. He would try to take his own life by ODing on his pain medication. He was discovered by someone and taken to a hospital. He would attempt suicide approximately 12 times until his eventual arrest. Come on, dude. You are just terrible at suicide at that point. Right? 12 attempts?
He quit quitting.
Yeah, like what? I mean, look, I've never tried it myself, but like I figure like if I were going to do it, I might be able to pull it off. 12.
You gotta want it, man. You
12,
gotta
yeah,
want
you
it.
gotta
Otherwise,
want it.
it's a bunch of failed cries for attention. Look at me. Look at me. And I only say that because it sounds very reminiscent of Charles Cullen, the Good Nurse.
Yeah, that's
Same thing.
Oh,
Same
man.
thing.
it, like literally almost all the same. He went to the military. He was a nurse. He was at a superiority
And
complex.
Charles Cullen's like all of his interviews, they're like, "Oh, are you a serial killer?" He's like, "Well, I guess by the definition, you could call me that, but I don't believe
guess.
that what I was doing was serial killing in the exact terms of the like. Ugh, fuck you."
Oh god.
And the whole time
And I
he's
didn't mean to
also
raise-
not looking at people in the eyes. He's like kind of darting around a little, like at the floor staring. Ugh.
Right, like, but he killed all of those people, but he couldn't like commit his own suicide.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Come on, little
No, his
bitch ass
workers-
Charles
Come on to
Cullen,
you.
bitch.
No, like suicide's a very real threat for a lot of people, but
It very much
when you
is.
do it 13, 14, 15, and you're just
Right.
like, it turns into an episode of Sesame Street. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 9,
Well, it
10,
also
11,
becomes
12, 11, 12.
it
No,
becomes
dude,
very
stop it.
easy to joke about too when you know how much of a fuckface this guy is. When if
Right.
we're talking about someone that we moderately enjoy that we know doesn't eventually end up killing people, please get help for the shit that you need. But
Yes,
if you
but-
are a serial murderer, yeah, it is down the road, not across the street.
Exactly.
So yeah, he's couple half dozen suicide attempts before his eventual arrest. It should be noted at this time that Gary's brother Terry, Gary and Terry, remember, is also
Jesus.
doing increasingly poor in his life, being bounced between mental institutions and hospitals for his multiple suicide attempts and paranoid delusional schizophrenia. It's all in the family, yo.
It's because they were named Gary and Terry.
At least
That
they're
is the root
consistent.
of the fucking problem.
The problem is consistent too. I like that. They're like, hey, can we just treat them the same? You guys always dressed them the same. Can we just give them the same meds? Like, give them the same slippers? We got this. We'll figure it all
Put him
out.
back in the same clothes. Maybe it'll fix it.
Okay, so it seemed that either there was something in the Heidnick blood and the upbringing of very close brothers had was successful in forming two very low-functioning members of society. In 1971, at 28, growing ever more aware of his self-importance, Gary began to look for a way to have even more power. Question
He wanted all of the Infinity Stones. Yep.
Question number 5. What would Gary do to try to gain some power? Now, before I give you the multiple choice options, if I were like a lame ass high school teacher, like option D for sure would be collect all the Infinity Stones. Cause like, you had that cool teacher who always gave you like, all right, like really, there's only 3 real options on here. Don't get this wrong, fuckface. All right. So is it A, start a cult, B, start a religion, pretty much the same thing, C, run for mayor, or D, get married?
Get married.
What way to
Well, that
get
was my answer too. I'm going to get married. Also,
Gary thinks the way to
I
get
don't
power
know.
is to get married.
yep.
That's not correct. I'm sorry, ladies. All right, you guys are still at 250 apiece through 5. He started a religion.
It was a religion, wasn't it?
He did. Gary Heidnick formed his
God damn
own
it.
church and religion, the, quote, United Church of the Ministries of God. He was an ordained
Amen.
minister and the elected bishop with all, like, total power. So I don't know how the structure of churches work, but the few docs in the book that I read talked about how, like, there's a succession of power within a church, and, like, there's a treasurer, and there's a, Gary was top motherfucker. He took the donations. Like, you didn't spend unless Gary said you spend. So it starts as like a fairly small church, but like throughout the time, he's going to at one point have like 70 people who come
Jesus.
and regularly use his church, which is also his home. He started the church with
It's serious.
with 2 other dudes who were apparently just con men at the time. And the third of his accomplices was another mentally handicapped gentleman. So, he kept good
Basically
company.
Mormonism.
Yeah. So
Sounds like good cornerstones for a nice strong church.
exactly. So,
Yeah.
and Gary didn't like just wake up one day and go like, I am a religion now. He did the research. There was real planning that went into it. Gary was actually able to incorporate as a religious entity. He got a loan through Merrill Lynch in the name of the church, not himself. He was efficient. He was
for him.
definitely efficient. Yeah. While most churches have a shared power system or hierarchy of some kind, Gary shat on all that. In 1976, Heidnick sold his first 3-story home and moved to another 3-story house with his illiterate, mentally challenged girlfriend. So he took some money that maybe the churches, maybe he got it somewhere else. Who really knows? But it was $35,000 that he came into. Some people say it was equity on his old home. Who knows? This money came up possibly from the church, possibly from all of it. But he gets it and he invests it into the stock market.
Good for him.
Yeah. Question number 6. It's $35,000 to start. How much did Gary turn it into? Closest to the answer gets 250 points, 1,000 if you can nail it. He could have turned it into 0. Did he turn it into $800? Did he turn it into $7 million? He had $35,000 to start. What did he turn it into?
Fuck. I don't like this game anymore. I'm going to go with $1 million.
1 million.
$1 million.
What did you turn it into? Fuck, I'll just go the opposite way. I'll say he tanked it. Lost it all.
You say 0?
Because I don't know. $0.
Here's what I'm going to do. Give you guys both points because he turned his $35,000 into $500,000. I was like, say $1. Come on, say $1. All right. I'll give you guys both points on that. 500 to 500. Yeah, he turned $35,000 into 500, which in today is about $2.25 million.
Nice.
Hey.
All right.
So
Tendies.
yeah, Gary lived it very he's like the game. He had a couple caddies and a Rolls Royce and a Rolex, but he still lived in the trap house in Philly. Like, he kept the shitty house. He also didn't care for nice clothes. Like, he wanted nice things like the watch and the cars. But, like, when he would bring women home, they would, like, comment on how shitty the house was and how dilapidated it looked and how the inside was just so unkempt. And, like... But they're like, but you just picked me up in a fucking Rolls Royce and there's a $10,000 watch on your wrist.
Yeah, how are you gonna be wearing a fucking presidential Rolex and bring me to this shit heap?
Hire a fucking
Like,
maid.
Your fucking mattress doesn't even have a frame. It's a mattress on the floor.
And it's got piss stains in it.
Remember too that it's
Is that urine?
1977 and he had a customized muraled van.
That's
Of course
sick.
he had a goddamn van.
Did it light up?
Dude, okay, so I will be honest and say that like I was running a little short on time finishing this outline and I did not go seek out this van. So it might be out there. We may be able to find some pictures of this Gary Heidnick shagging a wagon. But I like to just it's like reading a book, you know. I don't want to see what you think. I want to see what I think. Just tell me what it is. Let me imagine.
I have a good visual
Yeah.
and it's bad ass in
Yeah.
my brain.
No, I've got a great imagination. Let it grab me by the tit and run off. It's better.
And the whole time you just hear playing in the background. Yep, we're on the same page. It's fine. Okay, so at this time, he's got his customized van. He's all dope. He's a rich dude. 2.25 mil. I would call myself a rich guy if I had 2 million in the bank. Like, hey, you're not Bezos or whatever, but like, you know, there's a couple commas in my shit. So Heidnick and his girlfriend Ann Jeanette, who is also mentally challenged, had their first daughter and a daughter, and she was named Maxine. So this is another semi-permanent girlfriend, different one from the last. Her name is Ann Jeanette. They have a daughter named Maxine. Barely able to care for herself, Ann Jeanette was in no position to care for a child full-time, sacrificing what he claimed to be, quote, his time. He stopped doing, quote, his things to take care of the girl himself. Torn apart and exhausted, Gary hatched a plan that he felt was foolproof. So he's like, I don't know how this plan seemed foolproof when you like have a kid and you're like, I'm so fucking tired, I just want to sleep for 6 days. Because what he does is they get a babysitter for the weekend, and he and Anjanette drive across the state to an institution, across the town to an institution, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, to pick up her mentally challenged sister, 34-year-old Alberta, for a day out. So she's just like, oh, we're going to take her sister out. We're just going to go have a day. So her sister is not allowed to stay out overnight as she was unable to care for herself. Although she was 34 years old, she had the mental capacity of somewhere in the age range of 4. As soon as Gary got the chance, he took Alberta down to his basement and chained her up. When Anjanette asked where her sister had gone, Gary told her that he had taken her back. And Anjanette has the mind power of a 7-year-old. She's not, so he's like, oh, don't worry, babe, I took her back. And she's like, oh, okay. Like,
when?
Cool. Yeah, it's not even, when wasn't even a thought on her mind. She's like, oh, shit, sweet. I didn't say goodbye or whatever, but I'm like,
We didn't even know you left.
So, obviously, someone's going to be missing her. He signed her out of a mental facility. When she had not been returned that night as agreed upon, the mental facility contacted police. 2 days after she had been checked out, police arrived at the home and demanded to look around. They find Alberta in a basement, trembling and clearly afraid. The shock that set in over Anjanette when she realized that her sister had been in her basement was one of pure horror, said police. Police do not like the looks of this and order a full medical examination, which would show that the 34-year-old with the mind of a 4 or 5-year-old had been repeatedly raped and sodomized over the 36 hours in Heidnick's custody. So Heidnick was arrested and charged with kidnapping, unlawful restraint, false imprisonment, involuntary, deviant sexual intercourse, and interfering with the custody of a committed person. So these are some pretty fucking serious charges. He is charged with these offenses and was sentenced to question number 7. A, 3 to 7 years. B, 15 years. C, 2 years. Or D, he gets off on a technicality. So the charges again are kidnapping, unlawful restraint, false imprisonment, involuntary deviant sexual intercourse, and interfering with the custody of a committed person. So does he get 3 to 7 years, 15, 2, or get off on a technicality?
2.
3 to 7.
3 to 7 years. Yes, indeed. 3 to 7. So Nikki gets another 250 there. She takes the 750 to 500 lead. At this point, obviously, the relationship between he and Anjanette is over. He imprisoned her sister and stuff. This is question 7A of the 3 to 7 year sentence. How long did he actually serve?
18 months.
Yeah, 2 years.
Nikki's going to get another 250 points because of the 7 years. He served 4 years and 4 months before being paroled for his crimes. Yeah. Okay, so 1,000 points for Nikki, 500 for Angel. Still anybody's game. We are 7A questions through. We've got 17 total for you tonight. One of which will be a Bigfoot question for his story. So he's ready for that, right?
Oh, I'm ready.
So in 1983, he gets paroled. He's 40 years old, too, by the way. I mean, I know you guys know. It's like late 20s. That's when we see the blossoming usually, take place. Gary's 40. And I'm not saying he hasn't done some heinous shit. But in the grand scheme of things, 104 episodes in, how many
He
times?
held it together for a while.
Yeah. I haven't even had to use the new palate cleanser yet. You guys want to hear the new palate cleanser we've been using?
Yes.
Okay, so 40 years old, paroled after. He served a fair amount of his sentence. You guys were like, where I would have answered is he served 1 month of a 7-year sentence. It's usually some goddamn bullshit anyway. So he serves 4 years, 4 months. The following year, he's 41 years old. He purchased what is going to be his last house. This is going to be the house in the middle of Philadelphia and began advertising his church once more to area residents. So while he served 4 years and 4 months, his church continued rolling in his old home that he still owned and was able to make payments on because the church was still making money and spending money on nothing else but the payment of the church. So when Gary got out, there was a little more money sitting around for him because nobody could spend the church money. And he's like, hey, 4 years worth of church money, bitch. I don't even have to pay taxes on this. So the first thing he does with his little spot of money, puts an ad in the newspaper advertising for a wife, preferably Filipino. He later meets a 22-year-old Filipino woman named Betty Disto. They get married in Elkton, Maryland after just a few weeks, and Gary becomes, just a few weeks later, an overly abusive and terrible person, as you might expect. Some believe
I never saw that coming.
Yeah, some believe that Gary wanted to have the Filipino wife because he thought that women and Filipino people were both below him, so he saw her as subhuman and laid into her in like essentially his reasoning. And he does a lot of interviews later too. Like his reasoning is like, people that are not at my level are dogs. It doesn't matter what or who they are. Nobody is me, therefore everybody is dogs.
So in my case,
oh, you're a dog.
am I way like? Is it worse because it's mixed? Because I'm half and half.
Oof, I don't know.
Like
I'll have to ask Gary Heidnick.
Yeah,
but I'm not going to.
nah.
I said fuck him. Sorry, you could ask him though. just go like up to him. Hey, what up? Like, look at me. Woo.
What do you think I am?
I love lumpia.
Yeah, that lechon all day.
Okay, so he would. He's very abusive. Some believe that is exactly what he wanted. What she's going to do is pretty much initially find some other Filipinos in the area and take refuge in the community. Like, there was a fairly large Filipino community in Philadelphia, so she sought them out after like coming here from the Philippines as a mail order bride. And that was her refuge. That was the only place she could escape him and his monstrosities. And you will see a little later how crazy it's going to get. But when she is finally able to separate from him, once she finds a spot within the community, she files criminal charges against him too. And he is charged with indecent assault, spousal rape, assault, and involuntary deviant sexual intercourse. Listen, if you're charged 2 times in a few years with involuntary deviant sexual intercourse, they should just put a fucking bullet behind your ear. I'm sorry. I didn't know that charge existed. Know that existed until 6 months ago. And thank you, this show, for doing that. But that's the way I fucking feel about it. And a hot take maybe, but fuck it, I said it. It's out there. Gary's gonna face no repercussions for this at all because she refused to face him in court. So once again, Gary is walking away pretty much free. RJ,
I fucking hate that. That happens so often too. I hate that so much.
Like everybody's like, oh, is it nature or is it nurture? And I'm like, it's neither. It's how many times they fucking get away with shit throughout their life. That's what I fucking think it is. It's these assholes that just slip through the justice system that don't seem that bad. They're like doing these tiny crimes and then escalating and escalating and escalating and escalating. And then they're so fucking good at it by the time they've escalated to serial killing that they've learned to evade by, oh, I was a petty thief, then I was a rapist, then I was I don't know. That's what the theme is. They get away with it always. Serial killers are there are the exceptions that it's like, whoa, he was the family man. I mean, BTK was like, oh, he was a dog catcher. He was an ADT alarm installation guy. He was a great neighbor. I hiked the Grand Canyon with him, But then there are these, Eileen Wuornos who never had a fucking chance and it was just a petty criminal throughout it. And it just led to the feeling of invincibility, I feel like, a lot of times. Because you guys have probably watched a lot of these stupid fucking interviews where they're in there and they think they're going to talk themselves out of it. Like,
oh, yeah.
They're so fucking smooth that they're just going to be like, oh, detective who's been doing this 25 years, that's not possibly what happened, and I think you know it. I'll be leaving. And they're like, hey, sit the fuck down before I shoot you in your fucking mouth. You don't know shit. That's what I felt like with, what was that shithead recently who killed his whole family in Colorado. Chris.
Oh, Chris Watts.
All of his fucking interviews, I'm like, I just want to fucking gouge your eyes out
can't
so
with that
goddamn
guy.
bad.
I fucking guarantee you that guy wears tidy whities. Like, I fucking know it. Just
You heard it here first.
fucking mighty tidy whitey and a
Check
smuggle
me.
of plums.
Change my mind.
Dang, was that a Bloodhound Gang reference?
Yes.
When you wanna go. Okay, so we're just having so much fun, guys. Okay, so RJ Parker, the author of The Basement, says that this is the point where Gary let the voices in his head take over. So his girl, his Filipino mail order bride leaves him. He gets away with another rash of crimes, heinous ones. And at this point, he's like, yeah, I think they know what's up. I'm just going to do what they say. It seems to be working already. And
I'm gonna let you drive now.
you guys mind if I take a nap in the back? So yeah,
Ivan's driving.
he's kind of, it's downhill from here. Betty didn't tell Gary at the time, but she was also pregnant when she left him. She had a son named Jesse John Disto. She would attempt to collect child support from him later on. Another woman named Gail Lincow also had a baby with Gary, and Gail named the son Gary Jr. At this time.
Why?
I have no fucking, that's terrible. Because he wasn't around either. Like, it wasn't like he was there, like, what are you going to name him? How about Gary Jr.? She's just,
I think
yeah. But
I've read
Gary's
about somebody
very
else
good at
recently that did
manipulating. This whole thing is, I mean, it's about to get so much worse.
And what was her IQ? She might have just, that was the only thing she could think of, maybe.
Gary.
that was the only name she actually knew. She
It
was
was
like, we
like-
have to give them the same name.
It was like Mr. Burns after he woke up. He's like, Homer Simpson. She's like, Gary Jr.
I don't know. You could do it like the goddamn Cajuns do, where their daddy's name is Claude, so they have Claude Jr., Claudette, Claudinia,
Claudella.
I kind of like
Glenn,
that.
Glenda, Glenna. What the hell?
At this time, without Gary taking care of the child, because she didn't want to be with someone who had his sister captive. Ann Jeanette is forced to place Maxine into foster care. Here's where it's gonna get a little pretty real. We're gonna take a break, not too long from now, but let's kind of get into the nitty gritty here. On November 25th, 1986, the now 43-year-old Gary Heidnick is out looking for a sex worker. He is pretty excited over the fact that he pulls into a corner where there are two sex workers, and they're pretty much fighting over him. I guess it's towards the end of the night, and it's like, it's probably going to be the last John or whatever. So they race over to the car window, like, what do you need? And they know each other, so they agree to, well, look, you'll get the next one, whatever. And so Josefina Nicole Rivera, she seems to now, she's transformed herself. She likes to go by Nicole. Nicole's going to survive, by the way. That's why I know this. And she goes by Nicole. So I think a lot of places and books still refer to her as Josefina, and that's fine. That is her name. But she seems to like Nicole now, so I would like to respect that, and I'm going to call her Nicole. So,
Okay.
yeah, I just want to explain to people, like, her name's not fucking Nicole, idiot. It is, okay? Look at some
Why
recent
are you
shit.
making shit up?
Yeah. I just
Do
didn't
what I
want to do the
If you don't
research.
if you don't remember their name, you can't just make up a new one because we're trying to follow the story.
I didn't want to scroll back up. I'd lose my spot again. So the two finally agree to let Nicole take this one, and the other will just be for the next girls. Nicole has a few unwritten rules, one of which is to never go home with a client. They have too much power on their own home turf, just like Cajuns. The first two go to McDonald's, so right after they go to McDonald's, because she doesn't want to go home, so he's like, fine. Pulls into a McDonald's, they go inside. Gary orders a coffee, sits at a table, kind of sits there drinking the coffee, never offers to buy her anything, never says anything to her. So she's just kind of like soaking up the situation. She's looking at him. She's like, all right, he just picked me up in a brand new fucking Cadillac. He's wearing the presidential. His clothes are a little beat up, and like doesn't look like he showered today, but like some eccentric people don't that often. Like, clearly the money is there. So, like, in her line of work at that time, that's really all she was thinking about. She didn't care about the conversation over McDonald's coffee. So Gary kind of sits there, finishes up her coffee, and just like to note that Nicole is black. So Gary also grew up with like this huge hatred for black people in particular, but black women in particular. So for him, he didn't go out looking for an African American sex worker. That's what he happened upon. And so I think, and a lot of people think, that this is like his contemplative time. Like, he was sitting there thinking, like, do I want to take her? Like, do I want to go back out and find a white woman, or is like, this is what I'm going to start with tonight? So like, his hatred ran so deep that he's like, I'm not sure if I want to torture her. So that's kind of what Gary's going to explain later, like what the McDonald's trip was all about. He's like, I had to think about it. So
Did he
Okay.
not want to he didn't want to probably touch her at all or anything, right?
it was like that. Like, his hatred was so pure. Like, he said he was just burning with hatred. He couldn't even speak words to her at first.
Jesus.
So she feels sort of, that his quiet is like putting her at ease, because he's not beaming on her. He's not using sizzling eyes. He's just sitting there sipping coffee. She sees the fucking rolls, or the Cadillac and the rollie, and is like, all right, let's do this. So she agrees to go home with him after the coffee. A few things she points out is that when she gets home, to his home, she sees another car in the driveway, which is also a brand new Rolls Royce. So, okay, ballin'. But she's also noticed, like we said before, the house is in disrepair, inside and out. It is just fucking falling apart. When you walk in, there's like this long foyer, corridor, hallway thing, like, think between the stairs and living room in older, like, Victorian homes. And he's pretty much wallpapered the walls with $1 and $5 bills.
Sick.
Nuh-uh.
A stunting like a fucking thug.
Like it's a habit.
So she,
Damn.
Nicole, as somebody who, has not ever seen a lot of money and is, out doing her line of work to make the money, is stunned by it. She's like, what the fuck is happening here? Like, so I think there's just a lot going through her head that's allowing her to miss the red flags. There's a lot of things that are, and maybe that's by design, because I think Gary's a little smarter than he's going to get credit for. He's a very, he's very chess player, serial killer. It feels like when he makes a move, it's to make a move 5 moves later, like he's anticipating your play to make it come back. So,
He was really good at.
So the two of the agreed upon consensual sex, but after that was over, Gary would turn quite violent and begin beating Nicole mercilessly and choking her. He places her down into a small hole in his basement, and while it seems that some prep work had been done, the experiment is really just beginning now. He would put metal clamps around her ankles and attach them to chains. So think like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with like a U-clamp, so it's like threaded on both ends.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Okay, so he would put that and like clamp it down with locking nuts. So like, if you had a wrench, you could get it off, but you weren't getting that shit off with your fingers. But there was still some wiggle room, he noticed. So what he did was come in with like 4 ounces of super glue, drip it on metal to skin, and then blow dry it. So like, if they were going to rip out of that, like they were going to rip out of that. So they're in that and they're glued into it. That's chained. That's kind of comes to a harness at their waist, and then that is run over a pipe in the basement. So, I mean, I say they. She's the first one in there. So he's got her pretty well tied up. He asks her to sit up after he gets her all tied up. He takes her clothes off. He puts her in like this see-through blouse and lets her keep her socks on. Puts her on a dirty mattress. Asks her to sit there. Goes over. Puts his head in her lap and falls asleep.
Like you do.
Yeah. So
Why not?
So she doesn't know what to do, and eventually she nods off too. So the next time she wakes up, Gary's obviously not in her lap anymore, and she's just kind of looking around, and she can hear Gary moving around upstairs. So she thinks it's the next morning. She's not getting a lot of light down here. She's down there. She's fully chained up. Gary's not around. She's in a basement hole. And she believes that Gary leaves for the evening. Question number 8. How long was she in the hole until she attempted an escape? Could be hours, could be days, could be weeks. Closest to the answer gets 250 points. Nikki with 1,000, Angel with 500. Plenty of time. Plenty of time.
Fuck.
I don't know if she's having a hard, like, she doesn't know how long. Like, she's not getting light. She doesn't know, like, I don't know. I'll say 3 days.
I'm going to 6 hours.
6 hours. Nikki gets another 250 points because, yes, 12 hours. She was abducted approximately 11 p.m. and tried to escape approximately 11 a.m. the following day. Here's how that went. Notice how I said tried to escape. At some point, she hears what she believes was Gary leave. She starts plotting her escape. She knows she's chained up, but still feels like she can do something. The chain is quite long. She sees what appears to be a basement window that has been boarded over and has sandbags stacked behind it in an attempt to keep it from being accessed. Her chains kept her attached, but she was able to approach the window and pull the board and sandbags away. Hysterically, she began to yell up for anybody who could listen. So she's at a basement window. She's made it. She's like foot sticking out, like pulled all this shit away. Help! Help! And the first thing she gets is a tug on the chain. Gary had not left.
Aw.
Gary,
God damn it.
Gary pulls her back into the basement, throws a gag in her mouth, boards the window back up, cuts her chain length in half, loops it back over the pipe. And, while it seemed like on her, like, half a day of being captive, she might pull. Because remember, Gary's like in the middle of Philly. Like, this is not he doesn't have like a country home. He's in the middle. He's in a 3-story house that people still rent part of. He still is doing that thing in this new 3-story home. So there are other people here.
That's fucking ballsy.
Yeah.
Fuck. He has no fucks to give.
I didn't bring any sound clips. I didn't want to hear his fucking voice, but you guys should look up some clips of him sometime. He's so like, there's one where they're like, Gary, we heard that you would throw parties for them. He's like, how are you going to keep them entertained otherwise? Swear.
Oh, no.
And there's another part where they're like, so you began beating him pretty severely, Gary. And he's like, yeah, probably. Yeah, it's pretty severe. They're like, so this was causing great physical pain to them? He's like, well, I hope so. Like, it's so fucking gnarly. So, but he's just such a piece of shit. I didn't even want to. Most of the time, I'm like, all right, let him speak. This time, I'm like, nah, I don't want to. His stupid, shitty face, too.
Hey. Oh, my
Yeah.
God. I hate. Nope.
I know. I hate him, too. I'm with you. So,
Fucking hate you.
yeah, attempted escape over. She is going to spend. He puts her in an even smaller hole where it's like 2 by 2 across and it's about 2 feet deep. So the only way to get in it is to like crouch in, put your head between your knees, and then he closes the lid on the back of your shoulders, And so he puts her in there, and she spends the next 2 days in that hole before she hears above them the sound of another woman crying. On December 5th, 1986, the crying that Nicole heard was that of 25-year-old mentally challenged woman named Sandra Lindsay. She was a student at the Elwyn Academy, the stomping grounds that Gary would go to hit on and pick up unsuspecting mentally challenged individuals. Psychologists later say that this is Gary attempting to stay the smartest person in the room by only associating people that could not possibly be more intelligent. Giving you like the true predator vision here, I feel like, right? Like of serial killers feel like that. Like the lion always chasing a gazelle. Like this almost feels an exact comparison because he's not going after like college girls, which yes, like to a fully grown man might be a weaker prey, but he's literally taking out like, sex workers and mentally challenged women. Those are the only 2 targets he's got. So let's all join in hate with him together.
I'm with you.
Let's take a break right here. We'll do our own little palate cleanser since we can't play the goddamn song we want to. So we'll take a little break. We'll come back. Bigfoot's got a little bit of a little story for you guys that'll kind of be a nice palate cleanser. He's got a question for you, and then we'll get right back to the heinous Gary Heidnick. Come back or we'll kill you.
Remember when the psychologist was like, tell me, Bart, are you ever bored in school? Oh, all the time, sir.
Shut up.
Remember when he saw the devil and the devil was like, remember, lie, cheat, steal, and listen to heavy metal music.
Shut up. Hey everyone, it's Jesse and Greg, and we just wanted to tell you about our other podcast called The Super Simpsons Show, which is also on the Super Network.
Remember when the sushi chef was like, poison, poison, tasty fish.
So Greg and I talk about The Simpsons episodically from start to finish and shed some new light on episodes you haven't seen in years.
You remember when he was like, my real name is Armin Tamzarian.
We can be found wherever you get your podcasts and on Instagram at Super Simpsons Show. That's SUPR.
Remember Carl? My mother told me never to kiss a fool.
So join us in Springfield. It's a hell of a town. All right, welcome back, everybody.
Of a successful real estate agent.
This isn't even our second time bringing us back into this. That's not what we do here. We're very professional. This is our first time, clearly. Welcome back from the break. Bigfoot brought us a story here. He's going to bring us a different type of side story. Take it away, Bigfoot.
All right, boys and girls, let's get ready for Bigfoot's Cryptid Corner. I'm going to bring you guys a story of a cryptozoological creature, legendary in nature. This is the Loveland Frog Man, a.k.a. the Loveland Lizard. There's been approximately 5 sightings of the creature, and the first was in 1955 when a traveling businessman was driving late at night. He spotted a group of figures huddled together, conversing. The man said the creatures were standing on their hind legs and had webbed hands and feet, leathery skin, and deep wrinkles. The man watched as the creatures conversed until one of them held a stick or wand out over its head, and it began emitting sparks.
Whoa, do you think, were they buff?
Doesn't say that they were buff.
Could they have been Battletoads?
This is possible.
That's where my head first went. Okay, that's all I'm saying.
But yeah, it's possible. But it was at this point that the man fled the area. In 1972, Loveland police officer Ray Shockey was driving when he spotted a creature run across the road. The creature was fully illuminated by the vehicle's headlights, and Shockey was able to see it clearly. It was approximately 3 or 4 feet tall, weighing approximately 50 to 75 pounds. Shockey said the creature had leathery skin and frog or lizard-like features. Shockey said after the creature made its way across the road, it crouched by a guardrail, then momentarily raised up onto its hind legs, stared at him, and made its way over the guardrail and down towards a river. A second officer investigated Shockey's story, and though he did not see the frogman for himself, he did witness notable scratch marks on the guardrail where Shockey had seen the creature climb over.
Oh, so it's just fucking scratching into the aluminum guardrail? Hey, I don't know any frogs that are doing that.
He said, or lizard, frog or lizard.
All right, fair.
So a second officer cited it several weeks later. Officer Mark Matthews witnessed a creature lying on the edge of the road in the same vicinity as Shockey's sighting. Matthews originally believed the creature to be a dead carcass and stopped to move the body off the pavement. As Matthews approached the creature, it abruptly rose into a crouched position. Startled, Matthews pulled out his revolver and shot the creature.
First thought, what are you going to do? Ah!
Matthews then followed the mortally wounded creature over the guardrail where it ran off to. Matthews recovered the body. So what do you guys think it was? This is not an official question. But he did recover a body. What do you think the frogman was?
So this is a real creature then it turns out to be that he shot?
This one is a real creature.
Beaver,
okay.
I see just a leathery tail. Seems like if you're gonna misidentify something, that tail might fuck with you.
All right.
This isn't
Tell me again
an
where this
official
was?
question.
Yeah, it's an
right?
unofficial question, so you guys can just say whatever you want. There's no points for this.
You can guess what the fuck you want. It was a gator.
Ooh,
that is pretty good.
that's pretty good.
Standing up gator.
Well, it was actually an iguana.
Oh.
A 3.5 foot long iguana
all
without a tail.
Hey, that would be pretty fucking creepy. 3.5 foot without a tail.
Without a tail.
That's body length of.
Dude, that's a big iguana.
Ooh, yeah, Jesus.
So
Dang, that iguana's ham bone. This table's 4, so
dude, that's a huge iguana.
that's a very big iguana.
But despite the fact that these two killed the Loveland Frog Man, the legend still lives on. Most recently, it was spotted by 2 teenagers in 2016. The teens were at Lake Isabella when they spotted the frogman. Here's the official question. What were the teens doing at Lake Isabella? Were they A, on a date? B, they were fishing? C, they were playing Pokemon Go? Or D, they were water skiing?
Reply. Wait, was Pokemon Go a thing in 2000? It was probably fucking Pokemon Go. Dude, water pokies.
Water
I say B.
pokies. You say
Oh.
B, they were fishing?
Mm-hmm.
All right. The teens were playing Pokemon Go
Hey.
Fucking
when they spotted what appeared to be a 4-foot-tall frog near the edge of the water. One of the teens, identified as Sam Jacobs, spoke to the local news station WLWT, saying, "We saw a huge frog near the water. Not in the game. This was an actual frog." Then this thing stood up and walked on its hind legs. I realize this sounds crazy, but I swear on my grandmother's grave, this is the truth.
You know, what's funny is because I was going to say, like, if I were 16 and I were out at Millerton and seen some of the frogs I've seen out at that lake, I might, in my 16-year-old brain, exaggerate seeing a frog that was 4 feet. But I don't know how you exaggerate seeing it plop up on 2 fucking legs and walk away.
Well,
Drugs.
Sam Jacobs also
Sweet
submitted 2 photos of what he claims are the frogman.
What?
The photos were taken at night and show what appeared to be an amphibian-like creature standing in the water with 2 huge eyes reflecting the camera's flash. So, Jesse, I did bring the pictures if you want to take a look.
Fuck, I hate it so much because I Googled it 1 second before you sent it over here. Oh, you guys got to Google it if you got
all right.
to. Maybe type in Loveland Frog Man.
Ooh. All right.
Ugh, dude, it still creeped me out. I have to close the tab. It's gross.
Do you think it's like maybe a midget that was wearing like reflective goggles?
It for sure looks. It looks.
Totally what it is.
My first thought was that it looks too good. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, it looks too good. But, like, it still gives me, like, it put the eerie in me. You know what I mean? Like, even if it were a dude with, like, a zipper down the back of that shit, still the effort that went into it, like, remember in Signs when you saw the alien walk across?
Mm-hmm.
That fucked me
yeah,
up.
fuck that.
That
Me
fucked me up. And I'm
fucking-
not scared of
You're
shit like that, but it was just
right.
so fucking visceral and creepy and like should not have been there. And
Yeah.
like it looked exactly like what you thought it was gonna look like, but at the same time you were like, oh, I don't like this movie anymore, man. Fuck. Yeah.
This movie sucks.
Yes. You guys want to change it or what? Stupid movie? Ugh.
I lived right next door to a cornfield.
Oh
when
my
I saw that
God.
movie,
Fuck
too.
that
And I went
all to
home
hell.
alone. Yeah. I
Then
went
all of a
home
sudden
alone
you
after
heard on
seeing it
your
in the
roof.
theater. I was like, this is how I die. Fuck.
Oh
done.
yeah. Okay. Sorry. It looks fakeish, but I love how like gross it made me feel inside right off the bat.
Well, that's
I
the
feel
Loveland
bad.
Frogman. So they do have like a annual race, the Frogman race out there. If you're ever in Loveland, Ohio, you can go check out the
If I'm ever
Frogman.
just dropping by, I feel like if I were ever to go to Loveland, Ohio, it would be to do the Frogman race. So
I would
Yeah.
appreciate that.
let's make it our 2020 goal. Let's make it out to Loveland, Ohio, and run the Frogman. Is it early 2020? When's this race?
Oh, should I find out?
Make this a real thing. I kind of want to see the Frogman.
Dude, I'm in. We have a lot of listeners in Ohio. Let's do this. We can get them
Hey.
all in on it.
Hey, man. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's in Ohio.
I'm in.
Oh
I'm down.
man, I don't want to do anything else, but you guys have fun. Frogman, I'm sitting on the banks. That's it, like this.
We missed this year's Frogman race, but we can go next year.
When is it?
It's September 14th.
Hey, we just happened.
Yeah.
Okay. September. All right, I'm gonna try to fucking actually make this happen. Ohio. I can't imagine flights to Ohio are some hot commodity, high price Hawaii shit. So I'm gonna look into this and figure it out. No offense, Loveland. I'm sure you're fucking lovely. It's partly in the name. Thank you,
Yes.
Bigfoot. Appreciate that. And after Bigfoot's question, Angel has 750 points. Nikki has 1,250.
You fucking overachiever.
Ooh.
Closer than it sounds. Really, what that means is that it's 5-3. So you guys have 8 questions left. I keep fucking doing that. I have the mouse for the computer controlling you guys, and there's a computer in front of me that's not controlling the mouse. I keep going like, why isn't it working? Because I'm an asshole. Okay. Okay, so this one we're going to go right into another question. Number 10. So remember, go back in time, Gary Heidnick. He's just put Nicole in the hole. She's been in there for a few days before she hears another woman crying. It's Sandra from the Elwyn Academy. So question number 10. He has 2 women down in the hole. How many women total will see the floor and walls of the hole? How many women is he going to get in there? He's got 2 now. How many do you think total he gets in there?
8.
6.
3, 6, 9.
Damn, that's fine. Okay, so
Oh, you did it too.
for the 500 nailed it, Angel tied this thing back up because yes, 6 women would see the inside
Shit.
of
Who's
the
overachiever
hole.
now?
Yeah, I'll check you out. Usually it would be for 1,000, but the range was going to be pretty small on that, so I had to put 500 on it. But still, very nice. Nail it on there. 500 points. Tying it up. Making this shit a game. So, Gary got Sandra into the hole by having consensual sex with her at first and then overpowering her and taking her down into the basement. Because Sandra knew him, she was even more alarmed because she's like very familiar with him. And that's what Nicole mentions a lot in the interviews is that he just kept being like, you know me. Come on. You know me. Like, I would never hurt you. I'll never hurt. Sandra, come on. It's Gary. You know me. But all the while dragging her, putting her in chains and putting her into a hole in his basement. So I'm sure.
This is what friends do.
Yeah. Come on. You don't know. You go to the Elwyn Academy. What are they teaching you over there anyway?
What do your friends do?
Yeah. So Gary is a regular at Elwyn, knew Sandra very well and had developed trust over many years. He opened the hatch to the hole and put Sandra inside while continually reassuring her that he wasn't going to hurt her. Whereas Nicole understood that her fate rested in her compliance because, like, while Gary was the only one that could kill them at this point, he was also the only one that could keep them alive. And like Nicole was a survivor and understood that, and Sandra was a fighter and didn't. So Sandra was like, fought Gary. She didn't do one thing compliantly. She wouldn't go down the ladder. He pushed her. She wouldn't get the chains around her wrist. He had to hold her down and do it. So, I think he had the dream abductee on his first round, and the second one is a fucking nightmare for him. So he wanted to have control at all times. This is very obvious. This is also why he goes for, sex workers and mentally handicapped, because sex workers, sadly, what do they, nobody looks for them. Oh, they just left town. They're gone, The mentally challenged, it's like similar because he's only going after adult mentally challenged. So while they are mentally handicapped, they are also over the age of 18 and can also just leave on their own accord if they like, even if they are, technically disabled and have the mind of a 4-year-old. I think we're talking like, early 70s police work. There's like, yeah, but she's 25. Like, yeah.
She could have gone if she wanted to.
Yeah.
Nobody was keeping her here.
Yeah, it's actually the late 80s. Maybe I'm being a shithead, or maybe these cops were. So,
Little bit of both.
yeah, little column
Yes.
A,
Yes is
little
the
column B. So Gary didn't anticipate the fight, especially after Nicole. He thought he'd have control. He wanted a group of women who would listen, obey him, be subservient, and above all else, provide him with babies. So
Ew.
he had like a very sick, like Handmaid's Tale thing going on. He's like, yeah, I'll just get a bunker of them. And so, question number 11. What was Gary's quote unquote perfect number for quote unquote wives that he wanted in his quote unquote baby factory? So
it gets grosser by the
how many
minute.
did he want? I mean, he had a number in mind. I need this many for the baby factory. What was it?
A baker's dozen. 12. I need 12 of them.
7.
Angel's going to get another 250 points and take the
God damn
lead
you.
because it's 10. You were so close, too. So
I thought it was the closest without going over. Why are we not doing?
yeah, that's
Price
Price is
is
Right.
Right rules?
It's not.
Fuck.
I know. It's only that
I
if
like
there's
those
a
rules
tie. So if you would have guessed 8, it would have gone to you. That's how
All
I
right,
did it.
I see your rules.
I know. There's just house rules,
Shut up
you
and
know.
suffer in silence. Slut.
So, congratulations on your first lead, Angel. We have got 6 questions to go. As I say way too many times during every single episode. Plenty of time. So, this is all part of his religion, the Baby Factory. He wanted 10 women. He's the leader of this religion. They need to be part of him. Like everybody in this church should be from his
Loin.
descendants. Yeah, why not? Like we could make this religion a super army of my seed. So I'll just start kidnapping women and impregnating them. So the women who bore the children were like his sacrifice. That's what he thought. Like, oh, you'll stay in the hole, you'll have babies, but in the end, you're going to be rewarded the greatest because you helped build the religion. Right.
Amen.
So in the meantime, people are looking for Sandra. So she may be mentally handicapped, but she does have a family that was missing her. She had gone to the store and not returned. Police initially believed that she had just left and she's a legal adult and this is allowed. So, like I said, maybe lazy police work, maybe that's just how it is and that's how you have to investigate it. And she's 20, I want to say she's 24 or 25. This makes it not as serious to them. However, Sandra's mother claims that she led police right to Gary's front door because although he didn't have a record, she knew that her daughter was comfortable with Heidnick and she always had an uneasy feeling about him. Fucking hate that part of it. Police do approach Heidnick's home, but they knock on the door with no answer while they observe that the television is blaring and the radio is also playing very loud with heavy metal music. He's not breaking any laws and he does not answer the door. They can't just force their way in because someone is suspicious and they don't hear like a woman screaming downstairs. So
Why would you? There's a TV and a radio on.
So, police doing police work, they can't just kick in a door and then all of a sudden, it's inadmissible in court, blah, blah, blah. There are processes. And they definitely didn't go back on it. They were like, I didn't answer. And, I didn't hear anything except for loud TV. What are you going to do? So, Gary understood that people were looking for him and were kind of on the track. So he goes down and takes a piece of paper and has Sandra pull it from the package of paper, write a letter to her mom, fold it up, put it in the envelope, put the stamp, he takes it with gloves and posts it from New York. So it would only contain her fingerprints at any time. So if they checked it against that, and the letter said, because remember, she has the capacity of a 5-year-old. There's a photo of the letter and it just says, "Dear Mom, do not worry, we'll call. Love, Sandra." This didn't put her family's mind at ease at all, but it did make the police be even more complacent about it because, look, you got a letter from her now. What are you fucking worried about? Clearly she's fine. We checked it too. Those are her fingerprints, this is good. You guys, what are you worried about? So, yeah. This is not. Nicole claims for her first month that she was there, she was barely fed, and at the beginning, it was just things like candy and water. Gary would occasionally come down, and he would rape the women, or one at a time, and they were not allowed to shower or brush their hair or anything for over the first 2 months that they were there.
Oh,
Oh,
God.
Jesus.
On December
Right.
23rd, 1986, as Christmas approached, Gary began to feel the spirit and wanted to add one more wife to the family. So he set off
Oh,
in search
God.
of someone who would fit the mold. Gary said something lewd to this girl who was walking down the street, assuming that she was a sex worker. She was not. So she snapped back at him, kind of correcting him, and then his tone like completely changed. They said, like he said, I guess she's I can't remember if I don't remember if she was one of the interviewers, but his tone changes. Like it's a big thing with Gary is they remember like he would go from fucking raging to like, oh babe, I'm sorry, and he'd just turn real soft, and you know it was the switch would flip, and he would just be a new, different guy, and
Like on Happy Gilmore.
yeah,
I'm sorry, baby. I didn't mean it.
fine, leave.
I've seen your finger paintings and they suck.
Oh man, that's so good. All right. So he's screaming something lewd to a woman he assumes is a sex worker who is not. But the tone changes again. So he kind of does the whole like, I was just kidding. Like, you know, what's your name? Come on over, you know. And she starts talking to him. He apologizes, and he sees that she's out walking, and it's like December in Philadelphia. And he's like, well, I'll give you a ride. And she's like, oh, you know, I'm just kind of out. And he's like, well, I'm heading to Atlantic City. Like, what do you say? You're like, want to go? She's like, fuck. Like, why not? This guy, I mean, he's in a Cadillac. He's got a Rolex. It sucks, but that's what like a lot of them say. Like, that's why they trusted him. He had an expensive item that made it seem like he could be trusted. And it sucks that's all it took. He fucking played the stock market right, and it played right into his goddamn serial killer ploy. So the woman's name is Lisa. So Lisa goes with him to Atlantic City. She has her first glass of wine, and Gary had slipped something into that glass of wine. She passes out, and when she wakes up, it's in a dark room with two other women, Sandra and Nicole. The two girls did their best to fill in Lisa on what had happened. They're all aware of Gary's plan to harbor 10 wives and wonder how he would possibly do this in a space that they were looking at. While he had only 30% of his final goal, he already began to psychologically torture and physically torture all of the women that were down there. Nicole remembers that he would initially come down and they would all cower as he chose which one he wanted to rape. But after some time, he would bring down like a cookie or a tray of Chinese food, and he would just begin to reward them in small ways for being more compliant and molding them to what he wanted. So instead of cowering in the corner when he came down and had, you know, a tray of brownies, they would fight over who got to go have sex with him. And he was, you know, it's like Stockholm Syndrome 2.0, because he was like, he definitely like had an understanding of psychological treatment and torture and manipulation, because the things he did were very much like things that people were doing to lab rats at the time to fucking understand psyche and understand behavior. So he's perhaps ahead of his time when it comes to that. Fucking asshole. So Nicole, yep. But after some of the time, he'd bring down the cookies, he'd bring down the Chinese food. After a few days of this, they would get the treats. Question number 12. Besides the treats they would get and the pieces of bread that they were given on the regular, what was a main dish for the women most of the time? Is it A, cat food, B, vegetable scraps, C, dog food, or D, roadkill? Cat food, vegetable scraps, dog food, or roadkill?
Cat food.
Yeah, I was gonna say cat food as well.
Double cat foods, double wrong answers. They were dog food eaters.
Dude, if you say roadkill, I'm
Well,
okay.
Oh, thank God.
And the problem with
I didn't want it to be roadkill.
the problem with the dog food is, so like Gary would like bring down a TV sometimes and let them all watch TV, or he would come down and watch with them. And they had been eating like bread or candy or nothing. And a dog food commercial came on, and one of them commented like aloud, like, dude, at this point, I would eat that. Look at this, got like vegetables, it has meat. And Gary was like, huh. So he started feeding him what he called dog food sandwiches. So he would just get the cans of dog food, pour it into 2 slices of white bread, and they would get that and water for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Oh, fuck that.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. January 2nd, 1987, 23-year-old Deborah Dudley was abducted by Heidnick, and she was the only one who behaved this irate. So remember we said Sandra was a fighter. Deborah Dudley was a brawler. Like, she was... Physically, she was fighting him. She was headbutting, she was scratching, she was swinging, but also she was calling him like tiny dick, like fuck you. But that was like what they were saying in the interviews. Like that was like how she would hit him because she knew that hit him hard. Like so she was just trying to find the ways to cut into him, and she thought that's how she was gonna win. Where Nicole's like, nah, I'm just gonna do whatever the fuck he says. She was like, no, I'm gonna fucking cut him down, and eventually I'll own the situation. So, who knows? We haven't got to the end of the story yet, guys.
Needle dick.
So before her, the problem causer again was Sandra, but again now it's definitely become Deborah. Sandra's still a problem, but Deborah is the hard ass. So at this point, what he's doing is he's having Nicole hand out the beatings to Sandra and eventually Deborah, and it's not like do it and he leaves the room. He stands there and tells her like it better be a good beating or you're getting it too. So Machiavellian of him, right? Like, yes, I'll punish them, but you will be the one to punish them and I'll watch. So, Nicole at this point has kind of done the Stockholm flip. She's not on his side, but she understands that there is no other way. She has to do what he says. And eventually she's hoping there's going to be a time and a point where her escape and everybody's escape is possible, because she said that was something they talked about, that like, none of them will ever try to escape solo. Like they'll always try to make sure that they can they're all safe when it happens. So she took that very seriously and felt like she was on a path to get there, but it was definitely going to be a slow burn. It wasn't like, oh, I'll get along with him and tomorrow I'm dipping. It was, she needed to put the time in, but also I think there was a lot of manipulation and damage that was done too that added to it. It was a little bit of both. It feels to me, and maybe it's just hindsight for her, that she definitely kind of understood the situation, but at the same time, she was doing things that she never thought that she would be doing. I don't know. None of us have been there, so who the fuck knows where we would be, but I can't say, I don't know. Have you guys been held hostage in the basement? Or?
No.
Oh, okay, me neither. Well, there was that. Never mind. So, Gary he can't get control over Deborah. He's having Nicole beat her daily because he's over it. She's constantly verbally accosting Gary, causing him to grow even more apt to use his hands with all of the other women. Now, whenever Gary is punishing Deborah, he does it to at least one other, and sometimes even all of them. At this time, Nicole sees a man with a complex and began to play into that and pretend that she enjoyed being his wife and wanted to help him. It may have been part of Stockholm. We kind of talked about this. Once Deborah began to wear on his patience, his frustrations grew, as did his sexual appetite. So some of the survivor would say the more frustrated he would get, the more sex he would have. That was essentially the equation for him. So if you could keep him cool and level, like he wasn't coming in and even raping them daily. But if you had him pissed off, he was coming in and raping each one of them every single day, sometimes multiple times a day. So
that angry, spiteful.
Deborah was really bringing a lot of punishment to everybody in the basement, not just herself, was the idea of this. And at this point too, like he's got them like they're down to snitch on Deborah because she's fucking over all of them. So, and they get better things for saying like, yeah, Deborah was doing this. So it's like, oh, okay, cool. You get to go up in the basement out of the hole for the rest of the day. And Deborah, you're going to get a beating. So there was always a game. Like we said earlier, it was every single fucking move was just a game. January 18th, 1987, another woman is abducted. 18-year-old Jacqueline Askins was a sex worker, and Gary had an ice cream cake in his car. So this is kind of like two-part ploy. One, he had a party to get this thing to. Two, it was his excuse to immediately get a sex worker back to his house. Like, look, I got an ice cream cake in the back. Like, you down to get in and just go to my house? Like, that's kind of the deal I got here. And she was like, yeah, whatever, man.
Ice cream cake.
Yeah, fuck yeah, ice cream
This
cake.
is it. This is how I fucking die.
I'm getting in the fucking bed.
Oh, is that
Like-
mid-ship? Holy fuck. So she agreed, and they began to head towards Gary's home. Once she got there, she said that Gary had a few arcade-style games, so she began to play them. So when she gets there, like they don't even engage in sex right off the bat. She's like, "Oh fuck, is that Miss Pac-Man?" And goes over and starts doing her thing. While she's playing, he comes up from behind her, completely chokes her out. She awakes a few hours. I think it says a few hours. I don't know. She awakes later, handcuffed and very sore. She had been raped multiple times while she was unconscious. She believes that every time she she kind of has like blank memories that are popping up, and she thinks that every time she regained, Gary just choked her back out. When she got down to the basement, she sees 4 girls all having a small party with an ice cream cake for Nicole's birthday. This is another part of Gary's control is like he would always he would do things like this where, just as they're all starting to lose morale and faith and like they're all starting to just get to this dark place, he'd come down and bring a Chinese food menu and be like, pick anything you want. Tonight, it's anything you guys want off the menu. And he would,
that's how you get Nikki.
get $100 worth of Chinese food and let them gorge, even though he had been giving them like cotton candy and warm water for the last 3 days. And that's how you get Angel.
You got me with Chinese and Angel with cotton candy.
Sugar.
So, I mean, it's just another part of the ploy is like, right when they would be at their low, and that's when they were at their weakest, he would bring them so high up that they would forget about the last couple days because look, fucking ice cream cake and Kung Pao chicken, motherfucker. Like, who the fuck is mad at anything right now?
Kung Pao chicken,
Yeah.
you son of a bitch.
So, Heidnick also, he was also at this time, for some reason, just convinced that he impregnated Nicole and Sandy. Like they weren't growing pregnant. He didn't have them take a test. He's just like, oh man, I can tell you and you definitely pregnant for sure. So at one point he finds that Sandy had tried to get her way out of the pit, and this fucking pissed him off. So he takes her out and brings her up into the basement and hangs her from the pipes with her hand cuffed above her head and her toes barely able to touch the floor. After only a day of this, she stopped eating and began to run a high fever. So he was force feeding her for a day. And then like after a day, she's not eating and she's like burning up there. And he's putting the food in her mouth, like holding her mouth shut until she swallows and like punching her in the stomach so she eats it and shit. Yeah, it's fucking crazy. So one morning, Gary came down and Sandra was unresponsive. He checked for a pulse and found none. Question number 13. How had she died? Is it A, choked on some of the food? B, Gary had accidentally beat her to death? C, her lungs collapsed? Or D, a blood clot?
Ooh.
Choked,
It's either
beaten, lungs, or blood clot.
D.
I'm gonna say she her lungs failed in the position that she was in.
And you will extend your lead by saying
I
that
hate
because yes, she had essentially been crucified.
Yeah, dude, that's
Yeah. We're talking like her toes could touch the ground but not bear her own weight. She was hanging like this in handcuffs for 2 days. So
I literally just had this conversation with Spencer like 2 days ago about like what crucifixion did, like how it placed the weight on the lungs and the heart, and how you eventually like you didn't bleed to death, you didn't starve to death, you fucking suffocated.
fucking gnarly. And that's what like the girls mentioned, that she was like upright 1 second and then she became like slumped, like unnaturally slumped, like her chest cavity had literally like come in because the lungs weren't expanding to hold it open, so like the ribs came, and like she slumped in this weird position because her lungs had collapsed under her own weight on there. So yeah, she was crucified in the basement in front of all these women. There's 3 other women in there, and she's just hanging there for the 2 days. And they were like Gary's making them beat her and force feed her, and yeah. So Gary, of course, very nonchalant about the whole thing, takes her body away from the rest of the women briefly while he thinks about it, then brings it back downstairs and makes all of the women assist in cutting it into pieces. So, sometimes you have these people in your life that maybe they aren't your friends, but you went through like some type of bonding experience with them. Like maybe you whatever, you did some dumb shit as a kid and it was like super high adrenaline. So like you hung out with that person one time, but like you always remember them because like you had that crazy bonding experience. Like that's what's happening in this basement. These women are like living in there as the only people that they know now, and who knows what's coming for months at a time at this point. And they just see like what is effectively the only person they can now, one of the only people they can now like call someone they know, just die and hang in front of them. And then get drug away, brought back. And then Gary's like, yo, start cutting it up. And he stops referring to it as her and starts saying like, cut it up, go. And so one of the survivors in the interviews is like, yeah, like I cut her leg off. I cut 2 parts of her arm off. Like Gary cut her head off. So yeah, very, very heavy. So yeah, I know. So the other women are like very clearly shaken by what was happening. A lot of them said that it was terrifying before. It reached an entire new level when they realized that Gary was like now truly capable of murdering them. Because before, like none of them were that sure. Like he's got him there and he wants to sex them up and he wants his babies. But like they like his manifesto to them does not involve them dying. It involves them continuing to have babies until they can't have babies. So while they're down there and trapped and they're sex slaves, like I think in their mind, they're not thinking about getting killed by him. They're thinking about like, okay, avoid his wrath and like maybe we could try to get out of here. But like, I'm not sure that any of them truly, after being there for so long, thought that their lives were in danger. They were just going to be down in that hole forever. But now that's changed. They've watched someone die. He gave no fucks and made them be a part of cutting her body apart. So as they began to hear a power saw working upstairs for most of the parts, their suspicions seemed to have been even more confirmed when Gary's dog came downstairs with, quote, a juicy bone and proceeded to eat it directly in front of them. Yeah. So he knew that he needed to get rid of Sandy's body and like somewhere good because they knew one another and he was kind of like a suspicious character in the case. So he began to cut her up even further and take all the consumable meat, splitting it in between his dog and putting it into the food for the prisoners. So his dog got some of the human meat and the rest of the human meat went into the dog food that was fed to the girls downstairs.
But they didn't know, or they did.
Oh, they knew.
I think
had to know.
I think they knew like later, like after the body, like after what they were eating was gone. He was like, and just so you know, you've been eating Sandy the whole time. So he began, the rest of the body began to be cooked in the oven. So he was just trying to burn it out. Like he essentially cremated. He put like the torso in the oven. He's so fucking gross. The smell of all of this becomes nearly unbearable, and his neighbors begin to call the police, and it does indeed draw police attention. Heidnick was able to shoo them away. Question number 14. How did he so easily get rid of the police? Did he A, tell them to mind their own business, B, say that he burned his dinner, C, say he's cooking a particularly smelly dish, or D, say he has no idea what they're talking about?
Burned his dinner.
Tell them to go away. I don't know. I give up.
Angel stretching out the lead just a little bit more now with 2,000 points.
I'm just going to start guessing the same thing you do.
If I had a dick, this is where I'd tell you to suck it.
I would.
There
Like
are 3 questions left. I would suggest personally guessing something different so you can catch up. That's just me. I want you to have a chance. I'm here for you. Yeah.
Is that why you're winking at me during the right answer so that I know what it is?
You caught the Morse code. Fuck. So
a bitch out.
So a cop comes. He's like, "Hey man, look, I put a roast on. I had a couple brews, passed out on the couch, woke up to a burnt roast. What are you gonna do, man?" Cop's like, "Hey, you're right, man. What are you gonna do? Fucking people calling the cops over a smell. Am I right?" You're like, "Hey, buddy, no problem. Like, no, don't bother me anymore." And so the cop leaves, and free and clear for this very moment. Very soon after, he was having increasing issues with Deborah and her noncompliance. At one point, she was drugged upstairs with him. When she returned, it looked as if she had seen a ghost. When the girls asked her what was happening, Deborah said that Gary had explained to her that if she didn't behave, she was going to end up like Sandy. And it was time that he showed Deborah a pot that boiled a pot that was on to boil that contained the head of Sandra Lindsay. So it's just being boiled down. At this point, it's like a kind of a soupy mess of fat and hair. But like she understood what she was seeing in this 4-gallon boiling pot. That was probably most of the smell. So
Sons of Anarchy.
it's so fucking gnarly. So also again inside the oven, her ribs being burned down, trying to go down to nothing. She was also sewn the inside of the refrigerator where there were other body parts such as forearms and thighs. It is said that it took several days to recover, but when she did, she was going at Gary even harder than before. So she took 2 days off because she was fucking shooketh from what she had seen in the kitchen. And then when she came back, she was like, I'm going to die here anyway. So I'm not going out on his terms. So, question number 15, Gary suddenly had an idea for a new form of torture. What did he begin to do to them? Did he A, electrocute them, B, poke them with needles, C, waterboarding, or D, sleep deprivation? Electrocution, poking with needles, waterboarding, or sleep deprivation?
I'm going to go with waterboarding.
I'm going to say he started poking him with needles.
Both great guesses. Neither of them correct. This is when Gary got an idea to begin electrocuting the women.
Oh, jeez.
You know what? I got shit for this, actually. He didn't electrocute, because if you electrocute someone, they die. He began shocking the women by applying an exposed extension cord to the chains that they were tied up to. So he frayed one end, plugged in the other, and just hit the chains that they were on. Right.
All right.
At this point, Nicole has become exempt from any of these treatments as she was Heidnick's favorite wife and becoming very trusted. Soon, Gary evolved this evil plot, and what he did was, remember the hole we talked about? He dug it out a little deeper. It became now the pit. He filled it with like 2 inches of water and tossed the women in there and had Nicole start zapping the water. Like dropping the cord into the water to shock them into like the 2 inches of water. So at some point, the wire makes direct contact with Deborah's chain. The other women said that she screamed loud and uncontrollably before going limp, hanging from the chains. Jacqueline yelled up to please stop, that she thinks Deborah died. They then say that Gary pulled Deborah up by her hair, confirmed her death, dropped her back into the hole, and said, quote, "Finally, my troubles are over. I can go back to having a peaceful basement again." Yeah. So he's killed 2 now. Around this time, he had really ramped up asking all the women to police one another for better treatment, and every woman but Nicole had their ears gouged out with a screwdriver to make hearing worse, to make it harder for them to hear Gary coming. So he essentially held him down, put a knee on the neck and a knee on the top of the head, and he just kind of
Oh my God.
jammed screwdrivers in the ears until he was pretty sure, like, if they weren't deaf, they weren't going to hear real good for a while. I had a Q-tip too far, and sometimes I'm like, I've damaged something permanently. So I can't imagine gouging with a Phillips head.
Screwdriver.
Jesus. Hi-fi much?
That's what I thought of too.
After killing Deborah, Gary goes upstairs and returns the pen and a pad of paper and has Nicole write out that she, along with Gary, had just murdered Deborah Dudley, and they both sign it. Gary then tells Nicole, "You turn me in, you turn yourself in." Just then, Gary reaches down and unlocks the chains from Nicole's feet and tells her to head upstairs to get dressed. For the first time in 4 months, she was fully dressed and out of the basement. She was then forced to help Gary bring Deborah's body back upstairs, wrap it in plastic, and place it in a deep freeze. Over the next few days, Gary would occasionally take Nicole out, and she was always looking for her window to escape, but couldn't find one that would result in her living as well as all of the girls. Like, she really wanted to honor that. That was like, she had plenty of opportunities to dip. Gary had control. In his mind, she was his, like she wasn't going anywhere. And in her mind, I think she partially understood that. So that's why she couldn't run, because if she did, he's just going to go back and kill them before she'd ever be able to get someone back. And she knew that she wanted to hold true to that. Like she thought those deaths would be on her hands, and she already felt like Deborah's was on her hands anyway. So she needed to make good for that. So what a bad bitch, in my opinion. After Deborah's death, Nicole was also able to convince Gary to provide the girls with mattresses, blankets, and even a TV of their own. When one day Gary finally wanted to get rid of the body of Deborah, on March 24th, 2019, Gary and Nicole got out to some New Jersey pine barrens to dispose of the body. Gary goes into the pine barrens and Nicole waits at the car. Another time, she thought about running, but didn't because she's in the middle of some pine barrens. And by the time he knows she's missing, she got the car, blah, 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 blah. After then, the body is buried. Nicole tells Gary that she wants to see her family, and he agrees to it on one condition, that she help him get another woman for the basement. Of course, they had just had two die. They need someone to replace at least one. She agrees, but only to get some freedom. They're driving around an area that she is familiar with due to her time on the streets. She sees a young woman and recognizes her from work and convinces her to get into the car. Before she knew it, young Agnes Adams was chained up and raped in the basement of Gary Heidnick. Ever a man of his word, Gary offers to take Nicole to see her family. So, brings this woman back, brutally rapes her, then says, "All right, Nicole, like I told you I'd take you to see your family. Let's get it done." So Nicole goes up, gets some clothes on, and gets in the car. And as they're driving, she's like, "You can't go with me to see my family. That is gonna bring way more questions than just me disappearing for 4 months. That's happened before.
For real.
Me turning back up with a serial killer looking white motherfucker isn't helping anybody."
In the van.
So
Well, he's got all parts of the true crime holy trinity: double bridge glasses, mustache fan.
yep, he is in it to fucking win it. So she tells him to wait at a gas station on the corner of 6th and Girardi, and she gets out there. She's like, "They have great coffee here. I can go the one block up. I'll see my family. I'll meet you back here. If I'm not back in 30 minutes, like this is where I'm gonna be." He again, Gary's like he's in pretty full control here. He doesn't think that he has any problem watching her walk away right now. So Nicole gets out of his sight and immediately starts sprinting and runs the one block to her boyfriend's apartment, and somehow has the wherewithal with which to tell him what she had just endured. Together they call the police, and she tells them exactly where to find him, and the police first arrive to her and don't believe her story. Question number 16. How does she... I mean, look, I'm not saying that they... It is quite an outlandish story. We're talking like cannibalism, multiple women, a baby factory, and she's just like ripping all these off. The cops are like, whoa, crazy lady. Like, slow the fuck down.
All right.
And then finally she's like, "Dude, look." And she like holds out her wrists and ankles and just shows the bruises from her chains. And they're like, "Oh shit, that looks pretty
Our
fucking
bad."
brutal." Yeah. Might be.
Wait,
might
what were
be.
you saying again? Let's start over from
Yeah.
the top.
Exactly. So the police are now understanding of what's happening. She's proven it. Officer David Savage takes the call and approaches Gary Heidnick, still on 6th and Girardi, sitting in his vehicle having a cup of coffee. He asks Gary to get out of the vehicle, and Gary gets out and puts his hands on his head and asks, "Is this about my child support payments?" This is how confident Heidnick was that it wasn't like, is this? Oh shit, yeah, maybe I haven't made those. So he asks if it's that. David Savage tells him, "Yeah, I think this time it's a little bit more serious." The homicide team would get to Gary's home a few hours later after they had gotten reports again. They got the full story from Nicole. They go there and discover what was something out of a nightmare. They saw the boiling pot with a fatty residue in it. Heavy metal music was blaring, and the heat had been turned up into the upper 90s. Frank McCluskey headed down to the basement just as Nicole had told them. So Frank McCluskey is the head homicide investigator of Philadelphia at the time. Nicole's like, "Go to the basement. You're going to see this. You're going to see that. Like, this is and essentially everything she described is exactly as she described. McCluskey goes down, and there he finds 3 women dressed in only socks and very thin blouses. They're unable to unchain them initially because Gary had done welds on the nuts now. When they point over to another hatch on the floor that contains the new prisoner, Agnes Adams. So they like find these 3 women. They're like, oh, holy shit. And the 3 women are like, dude, there's another one. And they go and open a hatch and recover a 4th woman who had just been abducted hours before. Denise Turpin was another one of the investigators who was there. She was the only female homicide investigator in Philadelphia at the time. And she remembers the women like being ecstatic when they finally got out of their chains and the police were there, and they just kept repeating like, we're free, we're free, we're free. And she was like, oh, Denise Turpin said she's like overwhelmed with emotions because like she's looking around at like what these women have lived in and like how they look, and they're disheveled and they've lost, their skin and bones, and like all they can, like that's the only words they can get out of their mouth is like, we're free, but we get to leave the basement. So very heavy. June of 1988, Heidnick appeared before a court. So did the women that he had imprisoned. First, Lisa took the stand and described in great detail what he had done. Now, look, I'd like to just say this court case could be a whole episode itself. There's so much shit. So this is extra condensed version of the court case because 1, I don't give a fuck about court cases, and that's not what this show is about. 2, there was a whole lot going on in this court case. Let me just say that right here. Because we've got like, claims of Gary being the cannibal, claims of forced cannibalism. There's a whole insane, not insane. Did you understand what you were doing? Yes, we'll take this evidence. But if we take that evidence, we got to take this evidence, which makes it seem like he's kind of not insane. It's so much. It's so much. So give you guys the Cliff's Notes here. He very clearly guilty. Lisa takes a stand, described in great detail what he had done. Then Nicole, she was very clear and concise on what happened in the basement. She had a lot of the information that could help to lead to murder charges. She also made very clear that she was indeed the one that put the wire in the hole under Gary's force. And Lisa, who had gone first, she actually blamed Nicole for a lot of it. Lisa was the one who had been there like the second least amount of time. So she was pretty much there like when Nicole was only in Stockholm, like serve Gary mode. So in Lisa's testimony, she pointed a lot of fingers at Nicole. So Nicole goes up and tries to dispel a lot of that and kind of say what she had done. And Nicole had saved them all too. But then Jacqueline goes up and completely dispels everything Lisa says too. She had been there longer, understood a little bit more, and said pretty much like she had to do what she did because it would have been worse for everybody if she didn't, and that was just the way it was in that basement. So the last witness was Dr. Paul Hoyer from the medical examiner's office. He had a list of evidence that was damning. The biggest part of it was the list of various body parts found in the home, including 24 pounds of human remains. The jury is then dismissed for deliberation, and on January 1st, 1988, Chuck Bennett, the spokesperson for the jury, confirmed that they had come to a decision after deliberating for 16 hours. Heidnick is found guilty.
16 hours?
Yeah.
Motherfucker, took you that long?
There's so many charges. I think that was the whole thing, is that they had to decide which of the 42 charges he was going to be guilty for and not guilty for. So he was charged definitely for the larger of all of them. He's found guilty of 2 murders and other assorted charges. The jury condemns Gary Heidnick to death. December 31st, 1988, Heidnick purposefully overdosed on Thorazine and fell into a coma, which he fully recovered from. Still sucks at it. April 15th, 1997, Heidnick was scheduled to be executed by lethal injection at Rockview State Prison in Bellefonte, but last-minute appeals led to a hearing to determine his mental competency. So this was 1997. This is the last question. So, Nikki, you can't win. I'm sorry. Congratulations, Angel. But just for posterity, question number 17. In what year did Gary Heidnick die?
'99.
2003.
Who said 99?
I did.
Oh, extended that lead to 3,000 points. Yeah.
You were Googling him. You dirty bitch.
Just an extension of the scoreboard. So his daughter blocked the execution initially in 1997 on the. Remember his daughter Maxine? Yeah, she blocked the execution on the grounds that his paranoid delusions left him incompetent to waive his appeals, although Heidnick himself was requesting death. On June 25th, 1999, State Supreme Court affirms Heidnick's request of the death sentence, ruling that his daughter had no right to try to block the execution on his behalf. On July 6th, 1999, Gary Michael Heidnick's last meal was pizza and black coffee. He was executed by lethal injection and declared dead at 10:29 p.m.
Didn't we talk about him once?
No, that's why when. Anyway, that's why it sounded familiar. Anyway.
Did the familiarity catch up?
Yeah, because that was the year that I graduated from high school. And that was when my mom was like, this motherfucker. She was really big into true crime too.
I see.
And so then it started like kicking in. I was like, oh yeah, he's the one that they put him to death by lethal injection. He was the one that kept the girls in the basement. I was like, fuck, now I remember.
I remembered like 3/4 of the way through. I'm like, oh yes, I heard this before.
What are you,
How
like
would I
a
do
size 13? So that is the story of Gary Heidnick. Thank you guys for going on the ride with us. Congratulations again to Angel on your 3,000 point victory. Take a victory lap. What do you want to say?
I'd like to thank McDonald's
I don't eat McDonald's. It's Taco Bell.
for making those tiny little, you know where I'm going here.
Yeah. With my victory lap. I don't have anything clever to say, sir.
Oh, you don't need anything
I feel
clever? I'm just glad to have had you guys here.
I'm
Anything
really
you'd
glad
like
that
to
we
say?
finally got this like mapped out so that we could be here. Unfortunately I came to the table rather ill prepared.
No preparation necessary. I do all the work, so you don't have to.
That's
I'm my kind of man.
Whoa.
Hey.
It's that kind of show now.
Gary.
After dark.
Thank you. Although you did not get a victory tonight, Nikki, thank you for being here. Appreciated greatly.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Check out Color Me Dead podcast. You guys will enjoy the shit out of it. You want to tell them where to find them again? Google it. You guys, they don't need to tell you. Google it.
Fucking Google it. You'll find it.
Google. Special thanks to my good friend Biggfoot from BIGGFOOT Designs for stepping in as co-host tonight because Hello Greg couldn't be here. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome, and that's also hella whack that Hella Greg couldn't be here.
Running from government helicopters in his helicopter. So, yeah, man, thank you guys. Fuck Gary Heidnick. Thank you, Angel. Thank you, Nikki. Color Me Dead podcast. Thank you, Bigfoot. And thank you, everybody, for listening to episode 104 of the Serial Chillers podcast. And remember, don't talk to strangers. Bye.
This has been another presentation from Super Network.